little question.
Oh, sorry, we're
Apart
live now.
from Frank. Okay.
We're
Later
live.
then.
We're live. Let's get going. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Epic Marvel Podcast. We have a very special. We're live. Oh, hold on a second. I have to pause the video in my other window here. I do that often because I have it playing in a different window, and then it starts to play, and then. But anyway, so I think I've corrected that. So I'm going to start over. Welcome, everybody, to the Epic Marvel Podcast. We have a special video roundtable with a bunch of my co-hosts, and we're going to be taking a little detour from the Epic Collection, and we're going to be talking about the Infinity Gauntlet. This guy right here, one of the biggest events in Marvel history. One of the things that kind of kicked off the way modern comics and modern events work these days. Did I say it already? My name is Kurtis. I am your host of the podcast, and I have a variety of different co-hosts with me today to talk about this amazing comic miniseries. So let's go around the table and introduce ourselves. Let's start with you, Tommy. Welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello, hi everyone. So I'm Tommy. I'm from French Guyana, and I participate. I'm a co-host with you, Kurtis, on the Epic Collection podcast, and I participate on the Avengers series podcasts. So my first experience with reading Infinity Gauntlet was if I remember, when it was released in France. Maybe Frank, if you can help me with that. I think it was in 1993 or 92. I think something like that.
Can't remember.
Okay, all right. Yeah, but it was some time ago. I think I've read the first issue, and I didn't get the rest. And many years later, I got all the rest by a friend. I think about something like 10 years later, so I could read everything. And some later on, it was re-released as a hardcover when Panini has the rights to Marvel in France. So yeah, that's when I could read it in its entirety.
Nice. How about you, Jared?
Hi, Jared Abrahamson. I'm the co-host for the Captain America, X-Men, X-Factor, and Black Panther.
Oh, you've got a heavy load there.
Right?
Wow.
Anyways, so my first experience reading this Infinity Gauntlet series was about 2 weeks ago.
Oh, really?
Wow. Really?
Yeah. I hadn't ever gotten to it. I've always heard it was really awesome and great, but never got around to it until just recently. So,
well, that's really cool. We'll be interested to hear your perspective coming at it from a present day perspective rather than like a childhood perspective like mine.
Right.
And where are you in the world, Jared?
I am in Pueblo, Colorado.
Nice.
So yeah.
Right. Next up, Frank.
Hi, Frank Martini speaking from France. And we have Lily in the back that you can see as well, which is my youngest daughter. So I read the Infinity Gauntlet actually when it was released back in 91, and and I was lucky enough to get the original issues from my French comic shop in Marseille. And back in the days, and when there was still a comic shop in Marseille, and it was an incredible experience because, you had to wait month after month to get the next one, and whenever we got those books, the schedule of the arrivals in France has always been hectic, so it was quite a challenge to get all the issues, and I share your pain because I know what it's like to get one issue and not get the other ones, so. I have suffered that quite a lot. So, and it was a great experience, and I've read it many, many times for the last. My God, it's going to be 30 years soon.
Wow, yeah, that's right.
So yeah, I've read it a lot, and a great experience.
And is that a John Romita drawing on your wall behind you?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, there's a small story there. Actually, I got John Romita's email from someone from Tomorrow's Publishing, and I sent him an email because remember I told you because I'm the co-host of the New Mutants podcast. I forgot to mention that John Romita is the reason why I wanted to start reading, because I love Spider-Man so much. And I contacted him and I sent him an email saying, okay, exactly that. And he wrote me back with, and attached to it was this small drawing of Mary Jane, Gwen Stacy, and Peter Parker, which, well, made my day, my week, my month, and more of that. So it's not an original, because it's just scanned, but it's fantastic to have this.
Wow, that's really cool. Okay, so next up, Craig.
Gentlemen, or I guess everybody out there, I'm Craig. I'm the co-host for Thor and Doctor Strange. My first encounter with Infinity Gauntlet would have been in a old trade paperback when I was in high school. I found a collected edition in a dollar bin, so I first gave it a look, and it was more just seeing some of my favorite heroes on the cover. I thought, for $1, a whole story, let's give it a whirl. And I didn't even realize, I think, how big the story was when I picked it up. So.
Wow, that's really cool. Let's see. And my first appearance, or my first memory of Infinity Gauntlet was buying, I think it was the 3rd issue that I stumbled across at a comic shop, and I, it was really cool. All the heroes are together. So I had to go and find the other issues, and I don't think I actually bought them. I think it was Eric, my brother, who bought them, and I just read his copies. So I don't have the original issues myself. I have this trade paperback, but it is just a great miniseries. It was so interesting to see all of them together. So welcome to the show, everybody. Eric hopefully will join us in a little bit. He's looks like he's working out some issues here. And so why don't we just talk a little bit. The way I usually like to start these conversations is what do we need to know before jumping into this book? What are the key factors or the key elements, story plot points that we need to know before going into here? Does anyone want to share a little bit there? Sure, Frank?
So obviously it's interesting to have a bit of background on Thanos and know what has been happening in the 70s with Thanos, and especially the last important issues with like Marvel 2-in-1 annual where he dies, and the Avenger annual 7 where he has this major fight with Warlord and so on and so forth, Warlock, and so on and so forth. So that's interesting to have the background, and you can find these in the Avengers versus Thanos trade paperback, which was released 2 years ago, and which is a very good bargain to understand more. But more closely to the story, there are 2 main things which I have here in French, by the way. Maybe you have those very recent French collections covering the rebirth of Thanos, because long story short, Thanos died in the late 70s, I would say. Then Jim Starlin left Marvel Comics and worked on Epic, and then for DC Comics, killing Jason Todd in the process. And he came back to Marvel, and he took over Silver Surfer then. And when he did, the first thing he did in his first issue was bring back Thanos. And so there were a few issues with Thanos in it. And then very quickly, there was a 2-part mini-series also written by Starlin and drawn by Ron Lim called Thanos Quest, which is the moment when Thanos gathers all the Infinity Gems. So that's, in my opinion, a very interesting starting point to get to the Infinity Gauntlet. And one thing which is missing, and I would conclude with that, in Silver Surfer 35, there is a bit more explanation of the reason why Thanos wants to get rid of half of the universe population. And in the beginning, it's not the universe, it's just Earth. And in fact, it's point of view and his reasons for that are really tied with a sort of Rajal Ghul approach, saying that the Earth is overcrowded and humans are doing bad things to the Earth, and that's the reason why it needs to be cleansed of half of the humans. So that's the origin of why Thanos wants to get rid of half of the universe in the Infinity Gauntlet.
Okay, I want to pause just for a second and welcome Eric to the show. Eric, glad you could make it. Oh, I can't hear you. Can anybody else hear Eric?
No.
Oh, okay.
Nope.
Give your mic a try and let us know when it's when you have that up and running. So Frank, one of the, I think an important distinction to make is that in those Silver Surfer issues, Death is actually the one who brings Thanos back.
Yes.
And she is the one who gives him the mission to wipe out all, like, half of the sentient life on the planet. It's not his decision. She wants him to do it, and out of love, he's going to do it.
Yep.
Yep. Tommy, did you have anything else to add there?
Yeah, just a bit of trivia, because at the time Infinity Gauntlet was launched, was released in France, they reprinted the Marvel Twin One Annual and Avengers Annual, the Final Threat two-parter. I don't know if you remember, Frank, the Strange Special Origin. At the time, they reprinted the Final Threat, but yeah, it's only for French comic reader who will understand the reference. So yeah, as usual, off topic.
Okay. Jared or Craig, do you have anything else to add here?
Well, I mean, like Frank said, I think the biggest one is Thanos Quest. People should definitely check that out because it explains how Thanos got his hands on all those infinite gems, and that's key. There's also a bunch of things people are going to notice that are different in this from what they're used to if they've been introduced to the Marvel Universe through the films. Thanos isn't the father of Nebula, for example. There's definitely some different things. You also need to be aware it's referenced a couple times, but not a key plot point, but just so people know that it's not Thor that they're used to in this book. It's actually Thunderstrike, or it's Eric Masterson as Thor. Still, he's not Thunderstrike yet, but it's not your regular Asgardian god. So there's a few little tweaks and twerks in the book that are.
Peter Parker is married to Mary Jane at this point.
Yeah. I mean, Thanos has a brother, one of those characters that I'm sure Marvel was happily sort of pushing to the sidelines because Star Fox has become inconvenient in this day and age. Yeah. But
okay, let's pause here for a second and see if we can reintroduce Eric. Are you here now?
Yes.
Hey, welcome to the show, Eric.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. What podcast do you co-host with me, and when was your first time reading Infinity Gauntlet?
Well, I host the Fantastic Four and the Moon Knight podcast with you. And my first time reading Infinity Gauntlet was, I believe, when I was probably 7 or 8 or whenever it first came out. My friend John had it, and he let us read it like once. And then he's like, this is a huge thing. This is going to be worth money someday. And then he wouldn't let me read it again.
And then did you go out and buy them yourself? Because I think I remember reading your copies, or maybe it was John's copies.
I think it probably was John's copies. I didn't get them until quite a bit later when I started going to the like local comic conventions and picking them up for cheaper.
These comics used to be in like dollar bins and stuff.
And in good condition, they actually now, especially because of the movies, but they are worth more again. But there was sort of a period where they weren't worth that much, probably after, Infinity Crusade and all this stuff that sort of saturated the market with Infinity stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then I picked up all of the tie-ins for 25 cents or 50 cents.
So we have this is our whole team together, and what is really remarkable is that we are literally all over the world. So Craig and Eric and I, we're all related, so we are all in Vancouver. Jared's in Colorado in the United States. Frank is in France, and Tommy is in French Guiana in South America.
Yes, it's in northern parts of South America.
So it's really cool that we can get all together at the same time and be a part of this. It's quite awesome. Okay, back to our Infinity Gauntlet talk. I think another important thing to say is that in that same Avengers Annual number 7, Thanos, or that Adam Warlock dies in that issue, and Thanos as well. But Adam Warlock dies, and he's been in Soul World. I guess his soul got sent to inside the Soul Gem, and that's where he's been, along with Pip the Troll and a bunch of other people as well, for this whole time until Infinity Gauntlet number 1. Here we see they get reincarnated into different bodies at the beginning. So that's important to note too. And let's see, is there anything else that we need to know? Eric, you missed this part a little bit. We talked about sort of the rebirth of Thanos in the Silver Surfer issues. If at the beginning of this one, of the first issue, Thanos already has the Infinity Gauntlet. So Thanos Quest, the 2-part Thanos Quest story, is him gathering the gems, and he steals them all from the Elders of the Universe, who each have a gem. And I would recommend listening or reading the Fantastic Four Epic Collection, or sorry, the Silver Surfer Epic Collection Rebirth. That gives a lot of backstory on the history of the Infinity Gems and the history of the Elders and why they have the Infinity Gems. And the story in Thanos Quest kind of stems from that. That's Steve Englehart's stuff.
And did you talk about the origins of Warlock, Adam Warlock?
No, you can bring us up to speed there if you want.
I'm a little rusty on it, but the gist of it is that Adam Warlock is a created being by a group of scientists who wanted to create the perfect person. And he eventually sort of rebelled against them and struck out on his own to figure out who he is. Across a bunch of adventures, he ends up sort of meeting a darker half of him, splitting off a darker half of him, which is called the Magus, who is a purple version of him. And
With the fro.
With the fro, yeah.
The fro, yes. Luckily, he doesn't have that anymore. But Magus is involved in some of the early...
There you go.
There you go.
This is it right here.
Yeah, Magus is involved in some of the early adventures with the Soul Stones, or the as they were known at the time, Soul Gems, and yeah, it's something that you don't really need to know necessarily for the Infinity Gauntlet, but if you want to continue on from Infinity Gauntlet into Infinity War, etc., then you might want to read up on him.
Very true.
Yeah, but because he's not an actual person. This is sort of why he is special in Infinity Gauntlet. The Soul Gem has given him his soul, and sort of that's why he has this link to Soul World. One other thing I wanted to bring up that might be a little different is if you are reading current comics, if there's somebody who's coming in from the current Infinity Countdown series, the gems are different now. Through Secret Wars, the universe was sort of altered fundamentally, and instead of Infinity Gems, we now have Infinity Stones. They're uncut, they're rock-like things, and colors have changed from the powers. And the funny thing is they actually admit this in the comics. They like, oh, this isn't how I remember them. In your comic shops right now, there is a very nice primer, which you can probably pick up. It's just like a little leaflet that explains what the gems are and who has them right now, and also what colors they are.
Nice.
It's also important to note that they're not the same colors as what's in the movies.
Just because they want to confuse everybody.
Right.
Okay, Jared, you haven't had a chance to speak yet. Is there anything else that you want to add to this part of the conversation?
Well, I do have a question for everybody, I guess. Do you think you can read Infinity Gauntlet just by itself without reading anything before or after? Or, like, would that be a complete story in of itself? Or do you need to read the rebirth of Thanos and all that other stuff? Yeah.
I read it by itself originally, and it does work. This is back in the time where crossovers were meant to actually be one separate story, and whoever wants to tie in can tie in, but it's not essential. So from the tie-ins perspective, there's some neat stuff in there, particularly Silver Surfer and Doctor Strange, that really helps out in terms of things like Thanos Quest and the Warlock series before that. It really does, just as I was coming into the conversation here, it really does help explain the rationale behind what Thanos is doing, but it's not necessary because I think they cover it fairly well.
Yeah, there are definitely a few recaps at the beginning of issue 1 that kind of give us that tell us everything we need to know. I would say if you are not really familiar with the Marvel Universe at all, then you're introduced to pretty much every big character of the Marvel Universe at the time, both in the heroes and the cosmic universe as well. And that can get a little confusing and overwhelming. You just kind of have to roll with it. But as far as the story is concerned, it's a pretty succinct 6 issues.
And I would say if you know the Marvel Universe, but don't know the background for this, you could read this just fine. If this is going to be the first Marvel comic book you're ever picking up, you might find it a little confusing. It's something you need to. I don't think you need to, but you would be better off having at least some familiarity with the Marvel Universe.
That's a good point.
Yeah,
it's kind of like watching Avengers as your first Marvel movie. It works. You don't need to know tons about the character because it's mostly just action. But if you've watched some of the other movies, then it does make more sense.
Could you imagine someone going to see Avengers Infinity War for the first ever Marvel movie? Like, that would be just that would be a lot to take in. Okay, we should note for those of you listening in the future that Infinity War, the movie, has not come out yet. We are just a couple of weeks away from that, but we're recording this ahead of time.
Woohoo!
Okay, enough of this. Let's jump right into the issues and get on with our discussion about the book. Each of these issues is 40 pages. So these are all double-size issues, which is really cool. Written by Jim Starlin, and the first 3 issues are drawn by George Pérez, and beautiful work there. So in the first issue, we are introduced to the concept of the Infinity Gauntlet and what Thanos is trying to accomplish, and then we also, like I mentioned before, this is the resurrection or reincarnation rather of Adam Warlock, Pip the Troll, Gamora, Drax, a bunch of people who have been killed previously. And then we also see the devastation of half of the population of Earth in this as well. People just vanish in the blink of an eye. And then at the very end of the issue is the big reveal that Adam Warlock is back. We see the famous cocoon in the hotel room. So that's basically it. We also find out that this stretches beyond Earth and goes. It's the entire universe, in fact. And there's a scene with the Skrulls saying that half of their planet population has disappeared too, and they feel like it's the Kree, and so they're going to attack. And this is going to become a major interstellar issue between different alien races. I think, did I miss anything? Is there anything else important that you need to know here? Mephisto is there. Now, Mephisto shows up. He kind of befriends Thanos in the Silver Surfer issues. And he plays a very interesting role here because the whole time he manipulates Thanos. And we think Thanos is he is very intelligent, but he's so full of himself, but also so clueless of what to do in regards to his love for death, that he gets easily swayed by suggestions. And that's kind of the devil's MO is swaying people and being this, the shoulder devil. That's exactly.
And not just unsure of what to do with death, but just in general. Like, if you look at the first couple of pages, you open up to Thanos has created the giant word God out of stone, and he's had all of the gems for a little while now, but he's just using them to do little parlor tricks and not really sure exactly how he's going to use them. And Mephisto is sort of the one that guides him through, you can actually do quite a bit with this.
And it's interesting because when he gathers all the gems during the Thanos quest, all the time he says that you guys have been, to the previous owners of the gems, he says, you guys have been using them the wrong way. You should have been able to do much more about it. And when he gets them, actually, he doesn't know really what to do with them. He even forgets to get rid of half of the universe. Just does that at the end of the episode, while it's something he should have done initially. And so he's sort of lost. It's a bit strange.
Well, he uses the gems for petty vendettas. I mean, he's already brought his granddaughter in just for for taunting purposes. He's going to do more sort of petty, weird, small acts. Here he's been bragging about being this omnipotent being who has the power over the whole universe, and yet he's fixated on small, little, petty disputes and getting in arguments with Death's servant, and like it's really interesting how you're right, Frank. Like he takes the gems and brags about how he knows how to use them better, and they've been wasted on these people who had such small ideas, and yet he then gets caught up in incredibly small, pointless little interactions.
Oh, and one more thing, which we forgot to mention. Writer Jim Starlin, artist George Pérez and Ron Lim, and incredible inks by Joseph Robinstein all over the series, because he does a fantastic job.
Yeah, I think Joseph Rubinstein definitely needs some praise here, because he is the one who I think keeps the look and tone consistent through the change of artists halfway through. If it weren't for Joe Rubinstein, we'd have a two very distinct halves of the book, but he ties them together really, really well.
Yeah, just a bit. Yeah, sorry, go on, Eric. Yeah.
Okay. This issue is also where we are introduced to Nebula, and it's not super clear, but basically Nebula is somebody who has come to Thanos and said, "I am your granddaughter," and he sort of just takes her at that, but then uses the gauntlet to twist her into this like rotting corpse, sort of as a tribute to Death. And so it's not the Nebula that we know from the movies, the young, good-looking one.
Who has also been twisted by Thanos, just in a different way.
Yeah.
Tommy, what are you going to say?
Yeah. So I was. Yeah. That's the page you were talking about, Eric, when it takes place in the Silver Surfer issue.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's some bit of trivia during this first issue. So you see the flashback with the Death and the two servants. So in Thanos' quest, Thanos blew up one of the servants, and in the first issue of Infinity Gauntlet, he blows up the second servant.
That's true, yeah.
And another thing, when you see the flashback with Hawk, he's in a bar called Smiling Stands, and the barkeeper looks suspiciously a lot like Stan Lee.
Oh, I noticed the name of the bar, but I didn't notice the bartender. I'm going to have to look that up right now.
And just something about Nebula. The Nebula that you see in the movies is in fact based on her look when she appeared during Annihilation. So much, much, much later.
Jared, do you have any comments?
In 1992 or slightly after the Infinity Gauntlet?
Sorry, say that again?
I thought that Nebula had the look from the movies kind of just slightly after the Infinity Gauntlet, 92 or 93, kind of in like the Marvel series cards.
I don't remember.
No. And she was in fact, yes, sorry, Jared.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah. I don't want to interrupt anyone, but sorry. Okay, so it's kind of funny how you guys mentioned that Gamora was just recently brought back to life, and then she's immediately dead again in half the universe. I
Right.
think that's a little funny. But
Yeah, I was surprised
Yeah.
that Starlin didn't want to use that character in this miniseries, but
yeah,
you know, in fact, it was it's very also interesting, and we might talk about this a little ways down the road. He gets to choose who disappears, but most of these really powerful heroes are not the ones that disappear. So, but we'll come back to that a little bit later. Why don't we move on to issue number 2? Who did I ask to talk about issue number 2?
yeah, that was me.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, so it's titled From Bad to Worse. And, at the beginning here, it's just more of the aftermath of people finding out half the universe has disappeared. Doctor Strange is contacted by a mysterious glowing entity that says we must have a coalition to fight Thanos. And he and the entity, who you later find out is Adam Warlock, they meld their souls together and see their souls, which is kind of interesting. And then Thanos takes his brother Eros, he kidnaps him and gets rid of his mouth. Right, and then you see this page of all the heroes that have disappeared, and it's like all the Fantastic Four are gone, and I don't know, all of Alpha Flight looks like, and I don't know, a bunch of people are just not there anymore. X Factor, yeah, except for Cyclops.
Yeah,
Well,
and
who's silent most of the time? Who doesn't say a word actually in the whole miniseries?
Just to clarify for everyone, Eros is Star Fox. So
yes.
Yeah, he uses his real name repeatedly in this series, but that is the character. I don't know if you guys all noticed also, but they show on their list of missing heroes, Human Torch is missing, and then later he is flying next to a Quinjet talking to Thor.
Actually, that is the original Human Torch, John Hammond. In that scene, Avengers, I believe. Yeah, because he's on West Coast Avengers at the time.
That makes more sense. Yeah.
Okay. So the Adam Warlock's cocoon opens up, and he's completely reborn now. And what else? They bring in Galactus. Sees what has happened, and it's like, I have to get all the cosmic guys together so we can take on this guy. Thanos gets really mad and shoots a big power wave that hits the Earth and creates a whole bunch of chaos where like Japan disappears and a big earthquake in California falls into the sea. A big tidal wave hits Atlantic City, and the kind of funny, me being an American, the tower, with Trump on it is now
Trump Tower. That's right.
Underwater. So I enjoyed that. Honestly.
Yeah, that was funny. That is a funny one.
So I want to make a little note here that I got to talk to Jim Starlin recently, and he was telling me that when this, I'll play the clip here for when we turn it into a podcast episode, but he was telling me that originally none of the other creators who were doing other books wanted to be involved in Infinity Gauntlet. So like they just didn't want to have to tailor their comics to have these tie-in issues and stuff, which is why like all 4 of the Fantastic Four are missing, like they're not in this book at all. And finally, editors relented and gave them Cyclops and Wolverine, the only 2 X people in any of the X books in this miniseries. None of the other X, like Claremont didn't want to be involved in this at all.
It's key to note too. This time there was a lot of X books.
Yes.
But I mean, if you're going to go through the backstory piece of this, Starlin pitched it as like the equivalent of the Evolutionary War, and Thanos' sort of last story. And this is what ended up, because as you said, lots of people didn't want to participate, so it didn't end up being at the time on the scale of the Evolutionary War. Although I think it's fair to say that long term it has had a greater impact than the Evolutionary War on the Marvel Universe.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you look at Infinity War, the follow-up miniseries to this, like every book has tie-ins, because they found out that the sales for Silver Surfer and Doctor Strange, those books that had tie-ins, they jumped through the roof, and so everybody wanted to be on board when Infinity War came along.
There was a column on Comic Book Resources a few years ago. You know, they have this series called Comic Book Questions Answered, and they were talking about the Infinity Gauntlet, and especially Bob Harras, who was then X-Men editor, said, "No way, you're not using our characters. We don't see the point." Because at the time, we have to remember that X-Men was the top-selling book in the market. So why bother be on an Avengers crossover?
Mm-hmm. Yep. They didn't want to, especially when they heard that all the characters are going to die and that kind of stuff. It's like, no, we don't really want to have to deal with that kind of thing. One of the coolest moments in this issue, I think, is Odin gathers all of the gods of all of the different different things. It's a really cool kind of round table here. And Craig, in our most recent episode of Thor, we were saying, well, why don't they use the Celtic characters very much? Well, here's the Celtic god.
They get little random pop-ups in the Thor books, but they don't, like, they've never had their own run, and I think it's too bad. I do question whether you could get away today with having the god of the Native Americans lumped in with the rest of that. If that would be seen as sort of a little bit tone deaf in modern days.
I think it's worth mentioning that the way that the gods work in Marvel is that there are all of the different god pantheons from the different cultures, and they're all aware of each other, and they all sort of get along most of the time. Mostly if they stay out of each other's way. And then sort of above them, they're your cosmic entities like Eternity and the Living Tribunal. And then Living Tribunal often makes reference to the One, or the one above all, or some sort of being greater than all of that.
There's a hierarchy in this.
Yeah.
Of these cosmic beings.
Okay. Well, I was going to say that the meeting of the gods is a very cool moment, but it's ruined quite later in the issue, because when Thanos sends his shockwave, the Rainbow Bridge is broken, and the gods say, "Oh no, the bridge is broken. We're stuck here. We can do nothing." Oh no.
Yeah, it doesn't really have huge ramifications. The other thing I want to bring up here that also doesn't really have huge ramifications is the inclusion of Quasar. We see him in this issue, and I feel like the only reason why Quasar is important is because he's the replacement of Captain Marvel at the time.
Yep.
And Captain Marvel was a really big character for Jim Starlin back in the 70s. So he appears here, and he ends up really kind of doing nothing at all. He has no real point in this mini-series at all. Can we just pause for just a second here? Eric, I think your mic is close to a fan, or it's creating a low rumble.
I think it's mine. Okay, sorry, I'm just going to turn it off. Okay.
Well,
Hey!
Well, I think it's Eric's, because when no one's talking, it flips back to his screen. Oh, yeah. See, that just killed it there.
It's my fridge.
Oh, it's your fridge. That's a lot of fridge.
I can't do anything about that.
Okay, no problem.
It'll be fine.
Okay. Does anyone else have anything to say about issue number 2?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
no,
Frank, sorry.
go ahead. Go ahead.
When you see Spider-Man appear, he's drawn with the big eyes, just like Todd McFarlane was drawing him at the time. And let me see something else. When I think about Quasar, he was introduced quite recently at the time. I think at the end of the 80s, because the issues were the limited series was published in the beginning of the 90s. I think 91, something like that. So he was quite recent character. The Minotaur that appears with Doctor Strange is never named in the limited series, but he was introduced, I think, recently in the Doctor Strange series at the time. So they never say his name in the Infinity Gauntlet, but it's Hintra, I think his name. I think he was the host for Doctor Strange Spirit. I don't know really what happened at the time in the Doctor Strange series. It was, I think, Volume 2. It was Sorcerer Supreme, and he stayed besides Doctor Strange to help him in the series.
It's when Butch Geese was drawing the book, if I remember well.
Well, yes, it's at the time, yeah. And you see the X-Men appear recently when they try to contact everybody at the end of the issue. So you see there's no reply from the X-Men because I think at the time they were in Australia. So they had that spell from Nova and they couldn't be detected by electronic devices.
Right.
So that's why there's no reply from the X-Men.
Oh,
But
good comment.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot to mention at the beginning, I was amused because there's all of this ongoing internet chatter about Hawkeye has disappeared from all the posters for Avengers Infinity War. But he disappears from this book right away at the beginning.
Oh, so maybe that's why he's... Yeah, maybe if the movie follows the comic, Hawkeye is one of the casualties when Thanos wipes off half of the planet.
Yeah, I mean, the movie can't follow us too closely, but yeah, I found that amusing that everyone's all up in arms because he's disappeared from all the promotional material, but he disappears from the story right away also, so.
Nice.
I wanted to point out that while Quasar's role in this issue isn't very big, his role in the overall story does have a point. Then we can talk about this a little later, but he's the one that tries to use the Infinity Gauntlet to destroy Thanos and his little floating island, because he's the only one that can shield the blast from the rest of the universe at the same time. He also has teleporting powers, which are used occasionally. But his role also takes...
But that's not in this miniseries, right?
Yeah. Oh, sure.
Maybe it's in the Aftermath.
There's also more of Quasar in the... oh, no, you know what? I'm thinking of Infinity War. That's what it is.
Okay.
These all sort of blend together a little bit.
Yeah. Too much infinity.
Right. Especially like 3 years in a row.
Funny thing regarding the X-Men, though, at the time, because that's the main interest of having the original floppies, because you can see the old ads from the early 90s, and that's the miniseries takes place almost at the very time when they launched the new X-Men series by Jim Lee. So at the time, Cyclops was no longer in X Factor. He had just rejoined the X-Men. So that means that even editorially speaking, Infinity Gauntlet takes place, even though it's published at the same time, it takes place before Cyclops rejoins the X-Men and the gold and blue teams are relaunched.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
Why don't we move on to issue number 3? We'll keep on going around here. Who has issue number 3? That's me.
The title of issue 3 is Preparations for War, which is a very good description of what happens here. I find it interesting, the inclusion of S.H.I.E.L.D., because they don't really do anything. They just talk about what's going on a lot.
They collate data.
You get a little bit more of that here.
Tells you.
But you see Silver Surfer and Doctor Strange and Adam Warlock, they fly around to different places to gather the heroes. They open portals to bring all the heroes together and explain what's going on. They come up with some plan for action. And then Adam Warlock and Silver Surfer go off to meet with the astral deities of the universe, which are the personifications of emotions and other powerful cosmic beings. Uatu the Watcher is there, etc. They try to appeal to Living Tribunal to try and stop this, and he goes basically like, while I can, I'm not going to interfere. And then we end off with basically everybody storming Thanos's palace, with the little magical caveat that they're allowed to breathe in space for 60 minutes.
60 minutes, yeah. Okay, so I found the Living Tribunal's reason for not interfering quite interesting. Natural selection is what he says, and because Thanos did all of the work to get himself to the point where he was, he deserves to have this chance, I guess, to wipe out half of the universe.
Yeah, the gems are something that occur naturally in the universe, so anybody could just go and get them. And so by proving that he's gotten all of them, he has defined himself as the fittest.
And it's survival of the fittest.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cheap because he did not naturally come back to life. Death brought him back to life. So that's kind of he shouldn't be there in the first place. If anyone Living Tribunal should deal with, it's probably Death.
Yeah.
This also features another one of Thanos' petty side projects. Like, again, he's not using the Infinity Gems on a large scale because he's all bugged that Death isn't now excited to stand with him because he senses there's a coming attack, and he's convinced she should love him, and there's still no affection. So he creates Taraxia, and he's all taunting Death. Well, I don't need you. I can get my affection from anywhere. But again, that's a small, trivial piece when he should be reshaping the universe. And so here he is again, having taunted all of these other beings for misusing the gems, and now that he's got them all, his concern is finding somebody who can hug him.
Well, in order to make Death jealous, like he's so petty.
Well, but I mean, he's brought his brother back and took away his brother's mouth. He made his father disappear. I mean, really, if anything, this is just Thanos is having a temper tantrum on a cosmic scale.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love the little panels where Thanos and Taraxia are hugging each other, and then Death is just walking away, and it's she's getting smaller and smaller, and then Thanos's face is getting bigger and bigger, and it's like, oh, this isn't having the effect that I wanted it to. I think is what Thanos is thinking. Like, well, what do I do now? But anyway, that's just a really cool little section.
I really like the small moments in this issue. The moment when we see Black Widow saving people in that building. Then we have Moon Knight as well, out of the blue, and finally the fantastic moment on the roof between the Hulk and Wolverine, which is, in my opinion, the thing that steals the complete issue because it's a fantastic moment.
Yeah, just about Moon Knight, it made me smile because you have a full page, one full page with many panels dedicated to him. So he sees the city on fire, he gets angry, and that's all. You don't see him for the rest of the limited series.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe we can talk about a bit of trivia. I think it's personal opinion of why the characters appear here, who were the chosen ones. I think, of course, Spider-Man, he's always in the cosmic adventures, even when he's a lot underpowered in regards to the other heroes. I think even in Infinity Abyss, he made the he's a guest star in Infinity Abyss, and where he's not supposed to be. So anyway, at the time, Spider-Man was a highly selling book because of Todd McFarlane's art. Of course, Iron Man, he was at the time, it was, I think, during John Byrne's run, I think. And Wolverine, of course, he's the most famous X-Men. Drax and Firelord, because they were the cosmic characters that appeared during the time. Nova,
Well,
I
and
think...
Drax is actually created to destroy Thanos. He was created by Mentor, by Thanos' dad, in order to destroy.
you're right.
So it makes sense that he's here in this book. Although why Thanos wouldn't make him disappear is beyond me.
I want to know why movie Drax doesn't wear this awesome outfit.
Yeah, right.
No capes in the Marvel universe.
And
About Nova, I think it's because the New Warriors had quite a success at the time.
Yeah.
And Namor, I think it's because the John Byrne run was quite successful also at the time. Why Cloak was chosen, I don't know. I really don't know.
Well, he would have been a pretty new character at the time, right? Cloak would have been quite brand new.
He had been.
Oh no, I guess he was created in the 80s, wasn't he? In the early 80s.
Yeah.
Maybe he was available because he wasn't tied up in one of the books that declined to participate.
Right.
Yeah, I guess so.
Or could it be one of the 10-year we need to use this character licensing things?
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe
it may be they may be having they may have had their limited issues around that time, or maybe their ongoing series, the one drawn by Rick Leonardi. Then it must be around that time.
The Adventures.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just to finish Cyclops, I think because he's also, along with Wolverine, one of the most famous X-Men, and Hulk because, of course, of the mighty run by Peter Davids. I think, we don't see him later. Magneto wasn't on the list of the disappeared heroes, but he doesn't appear on this limited series. I think because at the time he was in the Savage Land, I think, or he would appear later. Because I don't know. What I'm trying to say is, at the time he wasn't supposedly dead, because at the end of Jim Lee and Chris Claremont's run, he supposedly died, just to appear later during Fatal Attractions. But at the time he was still alive, but he went a bit underground in the Savage Land.
Yeah, they don't really mention any villains except Doom or much to do with the X-Universe after sort of saying we can't get a hold of X-Factor, and then having Wolverine and Cyclops show up. So,
yeah, that's true. Okay, any other? This also. Am I in the right issue here?
Cloak and Dagger had a mini-series from October 1990 to August 1991.
Oh, that would be this time then.
Yep.
Yep. So in this issue, also at the very end, Adam Warlock and Silver Surfer zoom off to a specific point of space where they can have a good seat to watch the action and wait for the right moment to strike. This is a plot device so that the Silver Surfer issues can tie in without having any ramifications on what's happening in the actual miniseries, because all of the stuff that happens in the Silver Surfer tie-ins happens kind of in Silver Surfer's mind, and he just kind of sits there out in space watching while everybody else is getting ready to fight. Oh, and Doctor Strange stays behind so that he can watch the action from home, and that also is because his tie-ins also have they take him off in a different direction, so that what the stuff that happens in his tie-ins don't directly affect what's happening in the main series as well. And those are, I think, are those the only two books that get major tie-ins for Infinity Gauntlet? Or was there something
yeah,
else?
I can't remember.
Yeah, I think in a question of hugely related tie-ins, yeah, I think it's one of the two series, because there were other series that were tied in, but just one issue. I think of Spider-Man at the time, just at the end of Todd McFarlane's run as writer and artist, and I think also Peter David's Hulk. Incredible Hulk has a tie-in. I think it was about 2 or 3 issues.
Yeah, Hulk has 2 or 3, but yeah, the main ones are Silver Surfer and Doctor Strange.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Sleepwalker gets a
Okay.
tie-in.
In Gauntlet or in War?
Whoops,
Because Sleepwalkers.
Maybe I have it in the wrong slot. Nope, it's an Infinity Gauntlet tie-in.
Yeah, Gauntlet, yeah.
Oh, wow. Because I don't even see him in the crowds here. That's crazy. Okay, why don't we keep on going to issue 4? Who's got issue 4?
That's me.
Take it away
If
from
I
me.
remember. Yeah. So the title of this issue is Unreadable. But I think you could guess that it's cosmic battle on the edge of the universe, and it's the moment when George Pérez steps down as artist on the book and Ron Lim takes over. What is interesting is that I've been reading a few interviews from George Pérez, and he said that the reason why he dropped the book, because he dropped the book, he left.
Oh, okay.
It was not there is a reason behind that. Is that first of all, when he got the assignment, it was said that it would be the last Thanos story, and in the middle of the production of the series, he found out that there would be sequels afterwards, and he was not into it, and he was not really a fan of Jim Starlin's story, and that's something that he said. Basically, I got bored of drawing talking heads and having 40 pages, 6 issues of 40 pages, and he thought it was too long, and that's the reason why he said, "Well, I got lazy. I lost a lot of time, and I ended up saying to editor Tom DeFalco, okay, let's give the book to someone else, because in the first place it should be Ron Lim, because he has been drawing all the issues that led to this major miniseries. So that's the reason why Ron Lim finishes the book." So there are nice interviews of in the books of Tomorrow's Publishing and another one called George Pérez Storyteller, and both have a great moment explaining why he dropped the book.
Is the other side? Oh, sorry. The other side of that too.
Sure.
He came onto this book because he was mad at DC. He'd been on Wonder Woman, and he didn't like the DC crossover War of the Gods.
Yeah.
And he didn't like the way they were treating Wonder Woman over at DC. So this was his chance to sort of come to Marvel. But he was contractually obligated also to finish his work for War of the Gods. So I think at this time he was bored with this, and also having to fulfill a contract he didn't like over at DC.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And it was his first work for Marvel in a decade, because it was really his comeback to Marvel Comics. And when he dropped Infinity Gauntlet, he went on to the Hulk miniseries he did with Peter David, and then to the fantastic and Sex and Violence miniseries he did with Peter David for Epic as well. Really nice stuff. But let's talk about the story, which is basically a huge brawl between the heroes and Thanos, because that's what this issue is all about. Like, it's been building for 3 issues, and now they get together and they fight. And well, let's say that the heroes do not have the upper hand here, and that Thanos really get rid of them very, very easily, even though they attack. And each page of the issue is really the combination of heroes trying to attack and defeat Thanos, and there's a nice moment between Drax and the Hulk punching Thanos at the very same time, and so there are very comic booky moments, I think, in this issue. And at the end of the day, well, Thanos kills them all, and at the end of the issue, we see that the plot with Nebula, the subplot with Nebula, is getting closer and closer to its conclusion that will take place in issue 5. And we also have this very nice Captain America moment, which is in the top 10 Captain America moments, I think, when he tries to resist to Thanos' attack, and even though he has no chance, and he knows he has no chance, but he still attacks Thanos, while the Silver Surfer attacks and comes from a very faraway distance and tries to steal the Infinity Gauntlet, but fails to do so. And at the end of the issue, the Major League appears as Galactus, and most of the higher levels are here to try and talk some sense into Thanos or defeat him.
This was a mind-blowing issue when I was reading this when I was 10 years old. Because I was just kind of getting into comics at the time. 1989, I think, is when I was really getting into comics, and this is a couple of years later. But to see just the level of destruction, also the creativity in the violence, it was just it was quite outstanding.
And we finally get to see Thanos being creative with the gauntlet. Instead of just punching everybody to death, everybody has their own unique death.
Yeah, Cyclops is very, very nice, for instance.
Yeah.
And he delivers a lot of one-liners in this issue.
I think there's an irony, though, that George Perez wanted to leave the book because he was bored of drawing talking heads. And his last page, I think, is like page 8 or 9, right as the action ramps up, and he gives it over to Rob Lim. Kind of drawing conversation. I want to draw some fighting. And
well, now that we've got him off the book, we can start with the real action.
Also, I love the panel at the beginning is Thor, Firelord, and Iron Man charging through space, and then Namor, who looks like he's just really constipated.
Yeah.
And then you get the 3 big heroes, like Firelord shooting his fire beam, and Iron Man's blasting his pulsars, and Thor throws a hammer, and Namor just looks like he's diving off a diving board. Most pointless attack, because if the other 3 strike, what is Namor going to do in the end?
Also, he is about as far away from water as he could possibly get. So he really shouldn't have any power at all.
And he's not even the strongest, even if there were water. So I don't know why he's the one that's doing that. And you see Quasar flying around, but he's not shooting.
Well, the Quasar has a big standoff at the end where I think that was, you could just grasp how powerful Thanos is when he dismisses the quantum band as if they were nothing.
Well,
also,
can you say that again, Craig? You cut out. Hold on a second. Craig, say that again. You cut out.
I think they hold back Quasar because after all of the heroes except Captain America have fallen, Quasar steps in and mentions that he has his quantum bands, and then Thanos dismisses them as nothing. And I think that was a way of trying to establish just how powerful Thanos has become, because he just, in a blink, makes the quantum bands disappear. And they previously in the Marvel Universe have been established as very powerful weapons.
Yeah.
Well, and Captain Marvel was the one who killed Thanos in the first place, wasn't it? Oh no, sorry, it was Adam Warlock. Let me see here.
Yeah. Adam Warlock uses the Soul Stone to turn him into stone.
Yeah, it was at the end of Final Trait, Avengers Final Trait.
Yeah, but I think it's also called that Thanos and Captain Marvel, that was the original rivalry there. Thanos first really appeared in the pages of Captain Marvel as Captain Marvel's main villain during Jim Starlin's run there, and so to have Quasar, the person who has Captain Marvel's power, come along and be completely ineffective against Thanos was kind of just an example of Thanos' power. You're right.
Yeah.
I want to point out that it's also ridiculous that Namor can keep up with a repulsor blast and a fire blast and Thor's hammer. Also considering that you also have Nova present, but he's not the one that's flying at him.
And there were lists of people that could have been doing it, but I mean,
I really think that
Namor actually gets a shocking amount of play in this book. Like if you consider the list of characters here and the amount of people in the book, Namor has that scene. He shows up again a few pages later to get thrown into a wall, and then again he has like the weird expanding mold on his chest with She-Hulk. Thanos is surprisingly occupied by Namor.
Yeah. One thing I think it's Kurtis, sorry.
No, go ahead. You say it.
Yeah. One thing that's very important and very subtle in this issue is because at first Thanos was going to butcher everyone, but Mephisto goes to Thanos and tells him, "Why don't you make the fight last a little longer so you can please Mistress Death?" And even Hero says that Mephisto, in doing that, he actually saved the other heroes' lives, because the fight wouldn't last 1 second if Mephisto didn't do that.
Yeah, I think that this is where we really start to see Mephisto's long game. And if they were to remake this series now, I think that they would put Loki in this position.
Yeah.
But the whole...
They might be putting Loki in that position.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
There's a movie coming out.
Yeah. But the whole point of Mephisto in this entire story is, I think he realizes that if Thanos is able to control everything and just destroy everything, then he could be next, and obviously he doesn't want that. So he doesn't want Thanos to win. So he sort of inserts himself as this role of an advisor so that he can guide him towards a chance of failure.
Or obtaining the glove himself.
Well, or that. One of the two.
Yeah. Another thing, Craig. I think Craig, you're trying to speak.
Nope.
No. Okay. One thing that it's also better developed in the Incredible Hulk tie-ins is because at one point in this battle, Thanos makes Hulk gets really tiny, and Peter David uses that in its tie-ins from Infinity Gauntlets. Because during the Peter David run, when Hulk gets thrown back to Earth and he's tiny, he has a little adventure being the consciousness of Abomination.
That's clever.
Also, when Wolverine attacks Thanos and then Thanos changes his adamantium bones into this spongy rubber. Yeah. That just sort of reminded me of when, it would have been a couple years later when Magneto rips out his adamantium. So.
Good point.
Yeah.
Also, the scene when Wolverine attacks Thanos, I think 1 or 2 issues earlier, Adam Warlock says when the time will come, Wolverine or Hulk would finish the job, and it's acknowledged in the page where Wolverine leaps at Thanos. They say, of all the combatants, he will be one of the last I thought capable of delivering the death blow.
At the time, Iron Man wasn't that popular of a character, and I think if they were to remake the series now, he would get a much bigger role, especially with the movies and such. But in this one, he's actually taken out by Taraxia.
Yeah.
Right after he attacks Thanos, she just kind of tackles him, and then you see another 2 pages later, she's like got him on the ground, trying to rip his helmet off, and you see his head kind of bouncing.
Yeah.
The comment to this point is a jerk.
Yeah.
Right.
Jerk.
And he had the mullet.
Yeah, that too.
Magnum PI.
Yeah. Well, so did I, but
Taraxia is also the one that takes out Spider-Man, and you don't really see it that much, but in the background, Where is it here?
Oh yeah, when Thor is being turned to glass.
Yeah, when Thor's being turned to glass, you just see her with the rock, and she's bashing his head in.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
it's not bloody. Holy cow.
Blood on
Yeah.
the rock.
Yeah, and so you see a
Yeah,
close-up of her holding the rock, and it's got blood on it. But just in the background,
Wow. There you go.
You're hitting him.
Okay, let's keep on motoring through. Let's move on to the next issue here. Number 5. Who's got this one?
It's me.
Okay, Tommy, take it away.
Okay. All right, so issue number 5, it's called Astral Conflagration. So at the end of issue, Thanos says, oh, all right, let's play it real this time. So the fight is cranked up to 11. So at the end of issue 4, you see all of the big league joining in the fight. So at the beginning of issue 5, you see the Watcher speaking. So when you see the Watcher appearing on a huge event like that, it's got to be important, and that we will have a what if issue later on. So the fight begins. So it's an all or nothing fight. So every deity throws a blast at Thanos, and you see that Eros is really afraid of what's coming on. So even Mephisto tells him that it's gonna be a quick death. He's not gonna feel anything, but later on, he actually survives because that spared him and Nebula, and of course Mephisto. So after the huge blast, and you see also, I don't know if it's there. I think it's some page later. The Celestials are throwing. They are literally throwing planets at Thanos. So everyone who was living in the planet are dead instantly. So feeling, yeah, and so you feeling the blast. So Silver Surfer takes Adam Warlock far because there was a black hole approaching, and you see the effects of this fight on Earth, because the Earth was drifting away from the sun. So there was going to be another ice age on Earth, and you see, because the ripple of the galaxy is approaching Earth, the Annihilator and his forces from the negative zone are entering Earth. And I think it's a reference in the Incredible Hulk tie-in also. So going later on, there's a fight. You see Thanos doing his best as one impression as an actor when he gets torn between Mistress, Mistress Love and Sarah Hate. And also we have a turning point because Mephisto turns on Thanos and tries to pick up the gauntlet for himself. And when everything seems lost for Mephisto, Death saves him because Death says that it's enough. So Thanos also says it's enough, and he imprisons everybody. Then you see the Eternity joins the fight, and Thanos leaps at him and gets rid of him. So now Thanos has become the Eternity, and he doesn't have control on his body, and that's where we have the turning point of the series. And Nebula sees the opportunity and takes the gauntlet for herself, and now she's the one who has the power. So that's when everything ends. She banishes Thanos and Nebula to outer space, and you see Thanos thinking, damn it, why didn't have I made Teraxa able to breathe on space? Now Teraxa, he drifts on space and dies. Then you see at the end, Adam Warlock asks Doctor Strange to spare Thanos and bring him. So he brings a bunch of heroes. He brings in Drax, Firelord, Doctor Doom, Hulk, Thor. And so Nebula senses that the power she's wielding is too much for her. And let me see how it ends. So she, at this point, okay, I'm a bit lost here. Yeah, so sensing that Nebula has some doubt about the power she's wielding, Adam Warlock uses that to send the other heroes to get the gauntlet back from her. So at this point, you also see, well, no, I'll just leave it later for the trivia. So at the end, he imprisons everybody on a block of rock, and that's when the issue ends. When you see Doctor Strange, Thanos, Adam Warlock, and Silver Surfer ready to confront her.
This, if you ever want to teach like high school English, you can use the issue 3 in this issue for a lesson on foreshadowing. It's way back in issue 3. It's Vision who explains to She-Hulk that the Avengers have only ever defeated Thanos because Thanos screws up and allows himself to be defeated. And sure enough, Thanos screws up and allows himself to be defeated. So it goes exactly as Vision predicted 2 issues previously. So if you ever want to just take a quick look at a quick shot at teaching literary devices, there's a great one right there, about 100 pages apart.
And Adam Warlock takes the time to explain to Thanos that this is the case. Because they shared the Soul Gem, Adam Warlock has insight into Thanos that nobody else has, and says, hey, there's 3 times where you've had basically unlimited power. You could have, taken over the universe or done whatever you want, and all 3 times you have subconsciously caused or brought about your own downfall.
Yeah, this makes Thanos a very, very interesting character because we don't know exactly what his motivations are, but he seems to be like he's not satisfied with having all the power, but he strives for that so often. And like, why does he sabotage himself constantly? Because he does do that, and I think I haven't read anything past Infinity Crusade, but he, in these next 2 miniseries, he actually comes on board as sort of a good guy to help everybody out.
Even at the end of the
sorry.
So even in the end of issue 5, I mean, he is already back into a sort of different approach, and he joins the league of the ones who were attacking him a bit earlier. So that's quite the change of a character, and honestly, the thing with Eternity and how he loses the gauntlet is a pretty stupid move when you think of it. But it all makes sense when it comes to Thanos, and that's the way he is, and that's the mistakes he's making.
I'd like to point out that Thanos has become a god like he does in this issue before in Captain Marvel number 32.
Yeah.
Yeah, he does that. That's one of the times before that he mentions having absolute power. Like, he's done this move before, but stupidly he leaves his body just lying there right for the picking.
Was that the cosmic?
Sorry.
Was that what? Sorry.
Was that the cosmic cube?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, it was. Yeah.
And he already had the 6 gems, and he built a huge weapon out of it, and so he had 2 major opportunities before, and he messed up the twice before.
Yep. So this was just an amazing issue with all of the entities, kind of him taking them all out one at a time. The thing that Starlin used to do in when he was on Warlock and Captain Marvel is he was really kind of very creative with a lot of his panel layouts and that kind of stuff, doing some really cool things. And so I feel like Ron Lim is trying to do some of that stuff in his artwork and his layouts here, trying to be creative and come up with new ways to express just the sheer enormity of what's going on. But I actually think that Starlin's better.
Ron Lim stated he was intimidated taking over for Pérez because he looked up to Pérez.
Yeah, yeah, I can understand that.
And Pérez, to show that there was no hard feelings and he appreciated Ron Lim, does ink the covers for Ron Lim. It's not Robinstein who inks the covers. It's George Pérez who inks Ron Lim's art.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Yeah, just a really funny thing. So that's what I said I was going to save it for later, because there are 2 times in this issue that you see that Thanos has the talent as an actor. Because the first, when he's divided by Mistress Love and Sir Hate, he starts doubting himself. So he says, "What am I doing? I'm gonna kill them. Yeah, it's a madness." And the second time, at the end, when Adam Warlock confronts him with his failures,
Yeah.
he at first he said, "No, it was a mistake," and then he starts crying and, okay, I'll aid you. So,
Okay, why don't we bring this home? The 6th issue. I think, Craig, is this one yours?
This is, yeah. So this is Nebula's got the gauntlet now, and if we thought Thanos was ill-equipped to use it, then imagine his granddaughter. It is aptly titled "The Final Confrontation," and it starts off with one of those conversations that Perez didn't want to drop. And it's Nebula and Thanos and Doctor Strange and Silver Surfer. With Thanos, I don't know how he thinks he can get away with threatening her to give him back the gauntlet at this point, because she has it. But the key moment, or the key thing there, is at the beginning, she does not perceive Adam Warlock, so he is imperceptible to her, and nobody realizes this initially. It's Silver Surfer is confused and starting to piece it together. Thanos, when he pieces it together, almost gives it away because he starts grinning. But that's sort of that key piece. The other thing here that's interesting is Nebula undoes everything. Like, Nebula is actually the solution. I don't know if she meant to be doing something good, but she reverses everything Thanos did, and she sort of serves as this Deus Ex Machina at the end. But just, we're fixed, we're good, and has restored the universe and restored everything. And that's her first mistake, because she reverts everything back to how it was before hand, which means she reverts herself back into that decaying form. So much like Thanos accidentally made himself into a bodiless entity, she made herself into a decaying body. But Thanos can't help but gesticulate rather than act, and so she has time to realize her mistake and correct it. And so the issue sort of continues. The cosmic beings still don't like the fact that someone out there is as powerful as them, and they return to attack her. But she is not as well prepared as Thanos for this fight. Initially, they keep her off balance, and that is where Adam Warlock realizes he has an opportunity to strike and takes another shot at getting the gauntlet off of Nebula by going inside the soldier and sort of manipulating things inside, where he said he has more power. And Nebula doesn't realize, of course, that all this is going on. And in the end, she loses the gauntlet, and before Thanos can get his hands on it, our heroes return thanks to Doctor Strange. Well, not all of our heroes. Cyclops doesn't seem to come back with them, neither does Namor, so I'm a little worried about this team for the lack of swimming. They're at risk of drowning, sure. But some of the bigger guns, Drax in his fancy purple suit, Hulk, Thor, and Star Fox, they all show up and pummel Thanos before he can get his hands back on the gauntlet that Nebula has dropped. And the issue concludes with Adam Warlock having the gauntlet and convincing everyone that the best person to have infinite power is Adam Warlock. And I'm not quite sure if they should agree to the fact that one person has infinite power, but they decide, yeah, that makes sense. And then it ends with a really interesting sort of interlude where Warlock goes and finds Thanos living as a farmer on a planet, and Thanos seems quite pleased with his new simple life. He's not in his usual armor. He's got no grand plans. The whole story concludes with Thanos retiring, it sort of seems, which is too bad. He got dragged out of retirement for more crazy schemes and intergalactic failures. But this story at least concludes with a Thanos happily sitting on a porch, staring at a wheat field. So a very different Thanos at the end.
That's a great page, by the way.
Yeah, it was. I feel like it's a satisfying ending. I had no problems with it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think if it had been as they had intended, the last Thanos story, it wouldn't have been a bad way to end this character's decades-long arc through the Marvel Universe.
Yeah, a little bit of redemption at the end there. Yep.
And I love the fact that it's a quiet ending compared to what you see most of the time when you see a big crossover like this. And it's very quiet and everything is back to normal. But obviously it's not.
Yeah, well, and it ends with just Jim Starlin's characters. It's only the 4 people here, or I guess Warlock isn't. It's Roy Thomas's character, but he had such an impact on Warlock that it ends with Warlock, Gamora, and Pip and Thanos. So it's like these are the characters that he's been building for 3 decades, or 2 decades rather. Sorry, and this is kind of where it all comes to the conclusion. So after this happens, Starlin starts up the Infinity Watch series and splits the gems amongst his buddies. So he gets one, Drax gets one, Pip gets one, Gamora gets one, Moondragon gets one, and the 6th one goes to a mystery person that doesn't get revealed for quite some time. It's one of the mysteries of the 90s, of the Marvel 90s. But we don't need to get into that right now. Maybe we'll save that for a different episode.
Yeah. Just a thing before Thanos appears as a farmer, he decides to go out as quite an old-fashioned villain. He says, "Yeah, I have a bomb. I'm gonna detonate everything. So everybody get away from me." So at this time you think it's gonna be the end of him until you see the final pages. So yeah, he quite some time just before the end, he still has the old-fashioned villain style.
And I'm wondering if his use of his costume as a scarecrow is what Peter David called the mandatory Wizard of Oz reference. Because I remember that Peter David was using that line regularly, so I'm wondering if that's not something like it.
Okay. Yeah, maybe.
By the way, speaking of costume, I didn't mention it, but at this time the Hulk was using this costume because it was the Pantheon costume. At the time, he did join the Pantheon, and even I haven't read it yet. I've just seen some pages. But when he first gets this costume from the Pantheon, he appears and says, "Yeah, sorry, I didn't find the stock. It's a bit. What did he say? It's a bit tiny on him, but he didn't find the stock of green pants. If people would prefer it."
Right.
No, purple pants. Sorry,
Earlier, but I
Purple pants. Yeah.
And when Hulk is approached to join this group, he actually declines because he would be working alongside the Avengers, who had kicked him out. Because he was like the rampaging Hulk. And then when he became the smart Hulk, the intelligent Hulk, he joined the Pantheon instead of going back to the Avengers. And so it's here that Iron Man and Captain America go, well, actually, now that you're not, a threat and going to destroy everything, you actually are welcome back to the Avengers. And that's what that's the reason he actually joins.
Why he joins this group?
Why he joins this group, yeah.
Yeah. But he wouldn't join the Avengers.
No.
Again Well, any other comments about this issue here?
Right.
Yeah. I think that's interesting. We see Adam Warlock do something here that's not really explicitly mentioned in this series. You're sort of given the impression that each of these 6 gems alone controls some sort of aspect of the universe. And if you have all of them, you basically control the entire universe because you have control over all of these 6 different aspects. But it's more than that. There's a synergy between the gems. The sum of the... actually, in this case, the sum of the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And they work together to give even more power. And so from the Soul Gem, Adam Warlock, from Soul World, Adam Warlock takes control of the Soul Gem again to sort of to throw off the balance of the Infinity Gauntlet, and it causes this sort of a feedback loop, causing Nebula to drop the gauntlet. And if you look again at the little handout that comes for the new Infinity series, it actually describes how the it describes how the gems actually sort of work with each other to create greater power. And so when they've drawn it in this nice infinity symbol, where one gem affects another gem, which affects another gem in a circular loop. So then when you have all 6 together, it keeps...
It just gets more and more powerful, and it keeps on building and building?
Yeah.
Wow. Nice. Well, there we have it. This is the Infinity Gauntlet. Any last thoughts? How do you feel after we've gone through all of these issues here? Any new insights?
Yeah, I don't know if we can speak about it, or if we save it from later podcasts, but you see, Adam Warlock seems quite calm at the end of the series, but when you see, let me take this, when you see the beginning of Infinity Watch, and especially there was a tie-in to the end of Infinity Gauntlet. It was, that's it. Yeah, it's number 36, I think. Yeah,
Yes.
I'm sorry, iPad won't load up the comic. Yeah, yes, 36. You see that Doctor Strange has to calm him down because he actually gets crazy by wielding so much power.
Yeah, that's actually something that comes into play quite a bit, off and on again throughout Infinity Watch and the next couple of series as well. He definitely struggles with that. But yeah, let's save that for another time. I think we should definitely get together again to talk about Infinity War and see where this story continues. I think that'd be fun.
Yeah,
So,
I don't know. Yeah, sorry, Jared.
Just thinking about the movie coming up. I don't know how they can do this story without Adam Warlock. He seems a huge part of it.
I'm pretty sure we're getting a Warlock and a Pip the Troll.
Yeah.
Movie.
And so this is a 2-part movie. And so I don't think that we'll see him in this one, but I'm pretty sure we'll see him in Avengers 4, because in Guardians of the Galaxy 2, we have
they set him up. Yeah,
we have that golden race and we have the cocoon at the end, and I'm pretty sure that is Adam Warlock.
Yeah, they've had a cocoon.
Yeah, I think so too. But the thing is that we don't know, and Death is not part of the cinematic Marvel universe.
Right.
So it would be interesting to see how they give an interest to Thanos and why Thanos is this destruction force if he's not attached to Death like he is in the comic book.
Right.
Yeah, I would be disappointed if they just make him a mad tyrant that is power hungry and he doesn't get any deeper than that. I would kind of be upset about that, because he's such a very complex character, as evidenced in this book here.
I suspect you're going to be disappointed.
Yeah.
Except for Loki, Marvel has not put a lot of effort into fleshing out their villains.
Yeah.
In any of the films, really, the villains have been the one part that's been left under serviced in the Marvel universe for the most part, and I imagine that will be the case here as well, especially with the ridiculous number of heroes they have to work into this movie and origins they still have to establish. So.
Yeah, but the rumor has it that maybe Silver Surfer is gonna make an appearance in Infinity War. We don't know yet. Maybe it's gonna be Adam Warlock that's gonna appear. So it's just rumors for now. So we don't know.
We'll find out in a few weeks. Who here is going on opening night?
Definitely
Not me.
Not you? No.
Maybe opening.
I'll be there on the Friday night.
Just quickly, because I know Tommy seems to be a fan of trivia. The first appearance of Thanos in the Marvel movies, Jim Starlin did not know about it until 2 days beforehand and had to scramble to get a ticket, apparently. Thanos in the films. So,
sorry?
Jim Starlin was not aware that they had added Thanos into the Marvel cinematic universe, and he found it 2 days ahead of time. And then was scrambling to find a ticket so he could go and see Thanos in his first big screen appearance. So I know you like trivia, so there's your trivia.
The Thanos is one shot turning to the camera, but
I don't know if you. It's going to be another trivia section. I don't know if you've played the fighting game Marvel Superheroes that was released by Capcom at the time, because in this game, you
collect the
it follows the Infinity Gauntlet storyline. So we see some heroes that don't appear in the limited series. What's interesting is some of the endings. I'll talk first with the one that literally appears on the book. If you end the game with Thanos, you have to use a cheat code, so you have to choose between two endings. In the first ending, Thanos can keep the power, so in the final scene you see him as Eternity as he appears on issue 5. And on the second ending, you see him as the farmer as the ending of the series. When he gives away the power. And there were two interesting endings in this game. So of the 10 characters, Spider-Man, he doesn't use the power. Iron Man is tempted, but he gives away the gauntlet. Captain America banishes the gems in the black hole. Hulk is not interested. Psylocke and Wolverine also are not interested. Juggernaut tries to get to the Infinity Gauntlet, but Adam Warlock picks the gauntlet before him and says, "Thank you, you've saved the universe." So the most interesting endings are the ones with Magneto and Mephisto. There's also the ending with Shumagorat, but he's just an ending. When he gets power, he multiplies, he gets bigger, and he conquers the universe. So the two interesting endings are with Magneto and Blackheart. So when Magneto gets the Infinity Gauntlet, he creates a second moon for the Earth, and he calls it Avalon, and he makes it the heaven for all the mutants, so they can live there. And on Blackheart's ending, he gets the power and he kills Mephisto, his father. And it's a Mephisto that does not look like the one that appears in the series, but a huge demon like Malebolgia in Spawn series. So he kills Mephisto and takes he starts to rule the underworld. So I think it's one of the two endings that were the most interesting and who follow somewhat the idea behind the limited series.
Cool. Wow. That's awesome.
You know, just as we were talking about Spider-Man's role in this, I was thinking, this is only shortly after he loses his cosmic powers. So
yeah.
What would this have been like? What would this have been like if he had still had his cosmic powers? Would they still have used him, or would they have discarded him in exchange for someone else?
He certainly would have been more useful, that's for sure.
Well, he still wouldn't have been as useful as Namor.
Right. Oh man.
Well, yeah, because who is as useful as Namor? I mean, really?
in outer space.
Yes.
Okay, guys, we should wrap this up. This has been a great discussion. It was awesome to have everybody together in one spot. This is very special, and I think we should definitely do this again. Maybe when the next Avengers movie comes out, we can do the next Infinity series.
Just Frank, quickly, you're in France there. Do you still get single issues of Marvel Comics, or they only come out in trade form now in France?
The only series I still buy on a monthly basis is Amazing Spider-Man, because I'm a huge Amazing Spider-Man fan. So that's what I'm
in French.
But no, I buy them in the original American version, and we still have monthlies for Spider-Man, Avengers.
X-Men,
X-Men, Guardians of the Galaxy, stuff like that. So we still have they are not monthlies in the American way. They are sort of collection, gathering a few books. Like you have all the Spider-Man related book in one $7 monthly issue. Same with X-Men and Avengers and so on and so forth.
Yeah, so you don't get the 23-issue volumes, 23-page volumes like we get here, though.
The French edition?
No,
Today?
they combine them. They combine them.
Yeah.
It sounds like, yeah.
They used to do the 23-page issues. That's why I was just wondering if they still had them. So.
Yeah. But the French edition, the one you can buy in the equivalent of a 7-Eleven are incredibly cheap. I mean, these kind of things are, you know, like $6 or $7, and you have 4 or 5 stories in it. So it's incredibly cheap compared to American editions.
No kidding, the value is way better.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
But yeah, just to add something, it depends on how you want to follow the series, because if you want to, sometimes they do a special edition where they reprint some limited series or from now or from the past, and you have a trade paperback that in the US it's $10 or $15. You have it for €6 or €7. You think it's gonna be $6, something like that. Or if in the system that us in Brazil we call that mix. So you have the monthly, but you have one issue of to get the example from Frank. If you take the Spider-Man monthly, you have one issue of Amazing Spider-Man, one issue of Spider-Man. Peter Parker, one issue of Spider-Man 2099, and so on and so on. I think it's 6 books in one monthly.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, well, why don't we sign off here, and we will see everybody in our next episode. So, Tommy, we'll see you again in Avengers, which is coming out in our next episode will come out before this one comes out. So we'll see you then. Jared will be talking about X-Men next, I believe.
Yep.
X-Men Second Genesis.
Second Genesis, yep.
Yep.
Nice.
Frank will get you on for another episode of New Mutants. And Eric, I think the next one coming up with you is Ant-Man. We're going to be talking about Ant-Man in time for the movie. And Craig, we'll see you again when we talk about Doctor Strange.
Yeah, we just did
Afterlife.
a full episode last week, so everyone go back, check that out. And
that one on Thor.
For Doctor Strange. And everybody cross your fingers. I want some new Warriors epic collections. So hopefully Marvel will have some of those eventually for us as well.
Okay, yep. Maybe when if a movie ever comes out.
They're going to launch a new Warriors epic collection?
No. He wants one.
Okay.
That makes more sense.
Everybody say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.